Noise opera. Thank you so much. I am Captain Tommy Scoble, and you were on the lifeboat. One more thing. This is honestly, people. This is probably for an audience of one, but this is an in response to an email that somebody sent me. I had said something, and they said I hadn't heard that concept before. Could you maybe do a show on it? I've done a show on this, or at least have talked about this in maybe a dozen shows, maybe more than that. But this is something that let me see if I can spell this out, because this doesn't make sense when you first hear it. When you stop using dope or you stop drinking, the addiction continues to grow. The addiction starts from the day that you get strung out until the time that you die. That disease progresses, and it continues to progress, and it continues to get worse, and it continues to get worse, and it continues to get worse. And it doesn't make a crap bit of difference whether or not you're using or not. That's the truth. And anyone who has had a difficult time in the recovery game, anybody that made it 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years, whatever, and then ended up relapsing, what you will find is when you come back, hey, New Zealand Chili, good to see you. When you come back and you begin using again, the first day you're going to be using this much. By the end of the week, you will be doing what you were doing and probably more. The only times things like that don't happen is if you're unable to financially handle it or whatever. But in those situations where, even people who go to prison, I went to prison. I did a 48-month sentence. And in the 48-month sentence that I did for this particular crime, I was actually really trying to do the right thing and to stay sober and to play the game. However, the addiction continued to grow and continued to get bigger and continued to get bigger and continued to get bigger. So when I was out and with my wife, the idea of the two of us just doing a little bit of meth today, that day, we're going to just do a little bit of meth, babe, one day, no big deal. And that day ended up leading me back to my drug of choice. And within 7 days of being back on dope, I was doing more than I had ever done in my life. I mean, way more, because my addiction had progressed about 4 years. By the way, I'm not the only cat to say this. If you think that this is, hey, Tommy has come up with this concept or this idea that is, this is absolutely not me, people. This is, I have doing it hard this past week, full of so much anger. I don't know why, but I can't put a finger on it. I would be willing to go out on a wager and tell you exactly how you could figure it out, exactly how you could put a finger on it. And I bet you know what I'm going to say. I bet you know what I'm going to say. In fact, you could have learned a good one from the Normie interview that I did today, because Christy was talking about how when she journals, she continues to ask questions, like, how does that make you feel? Or why? How does that make you feel? And why did you do that? And why did you do that? And how did it make you feel? And if you continue to go down that rabbit hole with those two questions to everything you're doing in your journal, I promise you, your journal is going to tell you exactly the thing you can't put your finger on. I promise. Yeah, when I relapse, it would be 1 beer a day. In 7 days, it's 1 bottle of 100 proof rum in a sitting. Mr. Ray, I've talked about this on the boat before. I know a guy that started a company that is designed to help people who are going into recovery, sort of a one-stop shop. Everything you need. It'll hook you up with insurance companies. It'll hook you up with, lawyers who do pro bono stuff to try to help you get your license back or whatever. Very cool concept. And when the guy first talked to me, he explained that he was also a drinker, and he tells the story of his relapse. And he said his friend said, "You want to go to a ball game?" And he went and watched baseball with him. He said he had 3 beers, and he went home, no problem. Went to sleep, no big deal. And his friend called him 2 days later and said, "Hey man, it's it's a homestand. I got tickets again. You want to go?" Absolutely. He went and drank 2 beers, no problem. Went home. He said the following Thursday he was supposed to go see his probation officer, and he's not exactly sure how he got there, but he found himself sitting in the middle of the living room floor with a plastic bottle of pop-off vodka, and he's just squeezing it as hard as he can to try to get as much as he could into his mouth as fast as possible. And it's just a terrifying phenomenon. But I promise you right now, my addiction is lifting weights. My addiction is pumping iron as we speak. So is yours. And this is one of the reasons why when you got 10 years in it, you got 15 years in, and you start getting that wanderlust, you start thinking, what did I miss out on in 15 years of not being able to, do a bump, have a cocktail, whatever the case may be. And you start to get that wanderlust, and you start thinking to yourself, I wonder if I could handle it, because I quit and I haven't done it in 15 years, but maybe I outgrew that, or maybe I even wasn't really an addict. Maybe I was just physically dependent because of how much stuff I was doing. And these are the kind of questions that people ask themselves. But what you got to realize is, if you're wrong, if the dice come up snake eyes, then you're not going back to that addiction that you had 10 or 15 years ago. You're going back to an addiction that is ready to go. Very happy to be in the year 2023 with all of the ways that using has become so much more readily available and easy, where you can drive to a store to get drugs, or you can just go on to Instagram and check out somebody's Instagram page and maybe order a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they will just go and drop it off. I have a friend who's in a death metal band. I am not at all surprised that you have a friend who's in a death metal band, V. Yeah, it's a pretty terrifying concept. It really is. But make no mistake, your addiction has not slowed down in the slightest, and you can absolutely research the ever loving out of it, and you're going to find that without a shadow of a doubt, this turns out to be a fact, and it's frightening. It really is. The good news is, this is the kind of crap that, if you can figure it out sitting in a classroom, it's the best case scenario. If you have to go and get into the field, I have exercised 20 of the past 24 days. Well, that is awesome. I have a journal, still bringing myself to write something in it. Snotface, tonight, you should write down something fun in your journal. Doesn't have to be anything. It doesn't have to be anything poignant or anything important. Write something fun in your journal. Talk about the 3 greatest memories you can remember in your life. The 3 memories that you thought were the most fun. Forget greatest. The most fun that you can remember. Write about the 3 of them. And if it seems like busy work, it's not. What you're doing is you're chiseling into the memory bank, right? You're knocking the lock off the door, and you got to start that somewhere. That's why I say, write down every teacher that you can remember the name of, write down what year they were in. Like my 3rd grade teacher was Mrs. Allenby, and we used to call her this. And if there was one thing I can remember that was funny that year, it was what? And you start in 1st grade, and you start to work your way through. By the time you get to a sophomore or a junior in high school, if you're like me, a lot of us were already getting high, right? So we just start doing these drills, and all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, so that year, the one teacher that really gave me hell, his name was Link, and he didn't like me because of my brother, and he just gave me such hell. Well, I'll tell you something. Before I am done, Cemetery, good to see you, brother. Looking good and green. But I'd be sitting in these classes, getting stoned at a very, very young age, and the disconnect there happens. Well, you don't think about getting high. You don't think about any of that. You think about that teacher, and you start writing about it. And I think, oh, who was in that class? It was a girl that I was like pretty head over heels in love with. And this was a weird thing because she was actually a year younger than I was, but a heck of a lot smarter. So she happened to be in the same math class as I was. And we were an item of sorts. And sat side by side at like those little experiment desks that you have with the Bunsen burners and all of that garbage hooked up. And all of a sudden I go from writing about that teacher to writing about, one of the first girls that really rocked my world in my head, like really rocked my head, and has left an indelible mark, as so often happens with things from the past. Bo Beats says, question, Tommy, if a form of hypnotism can make cult followers comply to certain rules and behaviors, do you think it could be used to help in addictive recovery? Thoughts? Bo Beats, there are people who are doing it already. And I'm not going to tell you what they call the therapy, because then I'll get a bunch of people that say to me, it's a great therapy. It's not what you think it is. But there are therapies out there where they're going to literally have you force fed your drug of choice, right? But they're going to make sure that it gets you very, very sick when you do it. And they're going to do all kinds of sleep deprivation. They're going to keep you up, and they're going to do, you could absolutely brainwash the addict into making him a sober human being. You sure could. And it probably would not be nearly as difficult as doing it the right way, but you'd be brainwashing them. And I think that once you start to get onto that path, you start thinking to yourself, I wonder what else we could toy around with. I mean, hell, we've got the hood up, right? We're already tinkering around in there. I wonder what else we might want to do. And that's dangerous. That's how these things tend to start. The whole concept of people that, that go off of the deep end with these things. But hypnotism, when you keep somebody awake for a very, 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 very long time, right? They become hyper, they're very open to suggestion. I get cyclical vomiting from alcohol, and it's never made me not go back. I don't necessarily agree with that theory. Well, Snotface, what they do is it's a little bit different than, for instance, let's say your drug of choice was heroin. What they do is they go in there and they dope you up with really serious amounts of the drug that's going to make you sick. The antidote that you take for heroin, they put it in the person's body already. And then they bring in his drug of choice, and they bring it in with a needle or tin foil and a lighter, or however he does it. And he starts to smoke the stuff and gets very, very sick. It is a really unique kind of sick that you get when you're in precipitate withdrawal. And then they literally say, you're going to smoke that gram. And, a person that with every single passing hit, this makes it more and more just brutally painful. And I know a couple of guys who went through it, and it's, I don't know, I think it's barbaric. I think it's not too far away from A Clockwork Orange, right? I mean, you can start to see this working out in really, really odd ways. You know what I mean? The trouble is, once again, if you get your hand up under the hood of a car, all of a sudden you start thinking maybe a turbocharger wouldn't be such a bad idea, right? I mean, maybe if I turbocharge this thing, might run a little bit better. And you know something? Maybe I top off the windshield wiper fluid while I'm in here, right? Take a look at the electrical system. If you allow people to play with somebody's brain, nothing good ever happens. But it's another thing that, you warn people. Neurolinguistics behavioral training. You know what? Neurolinguistic programming, there are people who promise that they can do just that with neurolinguistics. And I don't know, man, there's science to back it up. There's science to back it up. But it's very much like what we talk about here when we talk about, I misunderstood where you were going with the hypnotism. But when we talk about instead of trying to quit something cold turkey because we're so damn bad at quitting, we're way better at developing a new habit. It's kind of the same concept. Instead of trying to concentrate so hard about getting this stuff out of your life, right? And now you have an opportunity to focus on something a little bit different. But it's you're always going to have an easier time creating a habit than you are breaking one. So, and it's why we always lecture here about having a routine that you do every single day. When you get up in the morning, you're making the bed, you're journaling, you're spending time in meditation or in prayer or whatever you're doing. And you're going to go do a little exercise, right? Go outside and walk or swim a few laps or do whatever it is you do for exercise, right? But have that structure so that you're not floundering around during the day going, what should I be doing, right? Because that sinks you. That sinks you. We've done a ton of shows on it. You can't have a ton of downtime. I promise you can't, especially in the beginning. In the beginning, it's just the longer that you're in this game, obviously, the better it's going to be for all parties involved. But please, if you send me that email, or if you just find yourself in the same position, you've been sober for a couple of years or whatever, and you think, on that day that you're feeling a little bit squirrely and maybe you think, what's a couple of beers? I could just quit again. You're not going to be fighting the same habit you did last time. You're going to be fighting a much gnarlier, uglier, free time has made me relapse every single time. David, thank you. If we're honest, almost everybody will say that. For real. You sit around and you get in your head, right? You sit around and you've got nothing to do and you start thinking, right? And you start looking back to the things that you've done in the past, except time knocks the corners off of those memories. And what you remember is getting high and laughing with your friends, and right? You remember it feeling really good, and you start glorifying all of that. You're not going, ooh, you know what? The following morning they came and turned my power off, right? Or the following morning I got the eviction notice. That was 2 weeks before the wife kicked me out of the house. When we look backwards, when we're starting down that relapse path, we look backwards. We're not very responsible, right? We don't really balance it out too well to make sure that we're not just thinking of the good. We should probably be weighing it in on the bad. This is one of the reasons that the best piece of advice in sobriety ever, and it will always be, if you want to stay sober, this is it. Right? There's no nuance, no nothing, no rocket science, 12 steps, this and that. If you want to stay sober, before you go to the liquor store or before you call the dope man, you call a sober friend. If you do that every single time you're planning to go use, you will remain sober the rest of your life. When people do not make that phone call, right? They've got people they know they can reach out to. They know they can reach out that minute to that person, but they don't. They drive to the liquor store. That person does not want to be sober. And I understand. I'm not mad at them. I'm really not. And I'll continue to knock at the door until they're ready to give it another shot. But trust and believe. If you're the person that says, I don't ever want to do this ever again, that's all it takes. Noise Opera, thank you, bud. Really appreciate you. Solid dude, man. I was telling a story about you the other day. I don't think you were here, but from, I look in the chat and I see you with a wrench and I just think, you know what, man? It's been a long ride here on the lifeboat, hasn't it? What a long, strange trip it's been, for at least the first two. Say thank you to all of you too. There's a great crew of people. There really is. And, you end up doing a lot of looking back. You don't want to do the same shows over and over again. So you start firing back through and looking at some of the other stuff that you've done. I mean, when there's, 1,200 of them out there or whatever, 1,200 hours or whatever, you start losing track and you're like, someone will say to me, you did a show on that. And I'll go, no, I didn't. They'll be like, yeah, you did. And they'll start telling me bits and pieces of it. I'll be like, Nah, you're crazy. And then they give me a month and I go find out that, yes, indeed, I did actually do a show on that. But one of the things that it does is I always pop in the live chat, right? I always click on every live chat from back in the day to see, who's there, who's sort of fallen off, who's come in, who's new. And man, there are just some names that I don't care which one you pop into. There are the pillars of the lifeboat, and I swear to you, people, there's no way to make more of this. There's not even a way to put this into words as well as I should. But I'll tell you something. There were ugly times where those individuals are the only damn reason that this boat is still here. I remember doing live feeds to 7 people, and you know what, like. And they, doing a show and wondering if anyone would show up to the next one and saying, if you show up, we're going to do it. I'll do the next show. If one person shows up, I promise you I'll do it. And it's a great group of people, man. Really, really an incredible group of people. And I could not have been more blessed, lucky. It really has been an absolute honor to sit here and do this. And here's to another another long time sitting in front of the mic. Hey, chase the heat. Well, you missed it, Johnny. I was doing a little I was talking about your addiction continuing to grow inside you while you're while you're in downtime. Your addiction continues to pump iron. It's a concept that is foreign to a lot of people, but it is a stone cold fact that happens. So, Johnny, I'm about to sign off, but I do want to thank all of you. I really appreciate you. Greg F., hope the eyes are doing better. You're always in our thoughts and prayers, man. It's always good to see you out too, especially in the comments. Awesome. All right, everybody. I will see a bunch of you for the old 5 a.m. good morning lifeboat call. Aversion therapy. That does sound pretty, that does sound like the name that's been hung on that. Some version of an aversion therapy. Yeah. It's, yeah, if you read about it, it's pretty creepy, in my humble opinion. Lurking and late. Not angry about either of those things. We're glad you're here. Forever 43. Yeah, you have a good night too. You know what? I'd take Forever 43, but I think if I was going to do Forever, I might have shot for like 29. 29 would have been great. My mother stopped at 29. She was smart enough to never move off of the 29 thing. Worked out. I haven't been so lucky. All right, everybody. I am truthfully going to sign off now. Oh, Lady BB, good to see you. I had no idea. See that? Good to see you, BB. Okay, excellent. All right, people, have a fantastic night. This was so much easier than writing out an email that would have taken me a really long time, or to go and chase down what videos I did. I talked about this on. Man, oh man, I'm not that good. There was a time I probably could have done that, but I do not. But I do not remember anymore. It just gets tough. Breath mints on the house. All righty then. Morton, good to see you. Always a pleasure, man. And I wish all of you a good evening, and I will talk to you. Hopefully, I'll see a lot of you in the morning, all right? So, I am Captain Tommy Scoble. This was Lifeboat. Night.